The autumn rain hammered against the windows of Salvatore's social club in South Philadelphia, each drop echoing through the dimly lit room like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. The air inside was thick with cigar smoke and the scent of aged whiskey, mingling with the low murmur of conversations that stopped the moment the heavy oak door swung open. Marcus the Hammer. Johnson stepped inside, water dripping from his worn leather jacket onto the checkered floor. At 23, he carried himself with the reckless confidence of someone who'd never truly lost anything that mattered. His knuckles were scarred from countless street fights, his jaw perpetually set in defiance. He'd grown up 3 blocks away, in the row houses where broken streetlights never got fixed and police sirens were the neighborhood lullaby. "Can I help you, kid?" A thick-set man in an expensive suit blocked his path, hand instinctively moving toward his waist. "I'm here to see Castellano," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the dozen pairs of eyes now locked on him. The room fell completely silent. Even the jazz playing softly from the corner jukebox seemed to lower in volume. To speak the name of Vincent Castellano so casually, without title or respect, was either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. "You got an appointment?" the man asked, his tone sharper now. "Don't need one." A low chuckle came from the back of the room where shadows gathered around a corner booth. "Let him through, Tommy." Tommy hesitated, then stepped aside. Marcus walked forward, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, past tables, where men in their 50s and 60s watched him with the cold curiosity of predators, observing prey that had wandered into the wrong territory. Vincent Castellano sat in the corner booth like a king on a throne. At 62, he was lean and sharp-featured, with silver hair combed back perfectly, and eyes that held the weight of 4 decades running the most powerful crime family in Philadelphia. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Marcus's entire wardrobe. Despite his age, there was something coiled about him, like a spring compressed and waiting. "You're Johnny Johnson's boy," Vincent said, not bothering to make it a question. He gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit." Marcus remained standing. "I don't need to sit." A murmur rippled through the room. Vincent's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Your father was a good man, worked the docks for 30 years, never caused trouble. Died of a heart attack last winter, if I remember correctly." He paused, taking a slow sip of his whiskey. "So what brings you to my establishment, Marcus? You looking for work? I'm here to make you an offer." "An offer?" Vincent's eyebrows rose slightly. "How generous of you." Marcus felt the heat rise in his chest, that familiar burn of adrenaline that always came before a fight. He'd been rehearsing this moment for weeks, ever since he'd heard the stories at McGinty's gym about the legendary Vincent Castellano, who'd supposedly been an underground boxer before he'd taken over the family business. "I hear you used to fight. Before all this." Marcus gestured vaguely at the opulent surroundings. "I'm the best fighter in South Philly, won every match at McGinty's for the past 2 years. I want to spar with you, just for fun." The silence that followed was deafening. Then someone laughed. A sharp, disbelieving bark of sound, then another. Within seconds, the entire room erupted in laughter, men slapping tables and elbowing each other, as if Marcus had just told the best joke they'd heard in years. "Kid wants to box with Vinny," someone shouted. "Hey boss, show him that right hook. Make sure his insurance is paid up first." Marcus's face burned, but he kept his eyes locked on Vincent, who hadn't laughed. The old man simply studied him with those calculating eyes, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "You're serious," Vincent finally said, his voice cutting through the laughter, which immediately died down. "Dead serious. And what do you hope to accomplish with this sparring match?" Marcus shrugged. "Prove I'm the best, that's all." Vincent set down his glass with deliberate precision. He looked at Marcus for a long moment, and in that gaze, Marcus felt something he'd never felt before in a pre-fight moment. Doubt. Not about his ability to fight, but about whether he'd truly thought this through. "You're young," Vincent said quietly. "Young and stupid. That's a dangerous combination in this world." He stood up slowly, his movements controlled and precise. Even standing, he was shorter than Marcus by a few inches, but something about his presence made the room feel smaller. "But I remember being young. I remember thinking I was invincible." He walked past Marcus toward a door at the back of the room. "Follow me." Marcus's heart pounded as he followed Vincent through the door and down a narrow staircase. The men from the bar filed behind them, their earlier laughter replaced by excited whispers. The basement opened into a surprisingly spacious area, a makeshift gym with a regulation boxing ring in the center, heavy bags hanging from the ceiling, and the acrid smell of sweat and leather. "This is where I keep myself sharp," Vincent said, removing his suit jacket and handing it to Tommy, who'd followed them down. He loosened his tie and rolled up the sleeves of his crisp white shirt, revealing forearms that were still corded with muscle despite his age. 20 minutes, 3 times a week. Old habits die hard. Marcus stripped off his jacket, his t-shirt already damp with nervous sweat despite the cool basement air. He'd been in dozens of fights, but never had one felt so charged with consequence. "We'll keep it friendly," Vincent said, climbing into the ring with an ease that made Marcus's stomach tighten. "Body shots only. No head hits. We're not trying to kill each other. Just have a little fun, as you said." Someone handed them both gloves. Marcus pulled his on, the familiar weight both comforting and ominous. The crowd gathered around the ring, at least 20 men now, their faces lit with anticipation. Money began changing hands as bets were quickly placed. Vincent didn't warm up. He simply stood in the center of the ring, hands raised in a classic boxer's stance that looked like it had been frozen in time from 50 years ago. His footwork was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Marcus noticed the way he balanced his weight, ready to move in any direction. "Whenever you're ready, son," Vincent said softly. Marcus bounced on his toes, shaking out his shoulders. He'd come here to prove something. To himself, to the neighborhood, to everyone who'd ever doubted that a kid from the row houses could be somebody. He moved forward, throwing a testing jab. Vincent slipped it easily, not even bothering to block. Marcus threw another, faster. Vincent moved his head just enough for the punch to whisper past his ear. The younger fighter began to circle, looking for an opening. His style was aggressive, street smart, honed from hundreds of backroom brawls where rules were suggestions and survival was the only prize. He feinted left, then threw a hard right toward Vincent's ribs. Vincent's movement was minimal, but perfect. He pivoted slightly, letting the punch slide past, then tapped Marcus's extended arm with his own glove. Not a hit, just a touch, like a teacher correcting a student's form. "Too wide," Vincent said calmly. "You're leaving yourself open." Frustration flared in Marcus's chest. He pressed forward, throwing a combination, jab, jab, right hook. Vincent blocked the first two and swayed back from the third, his feet moving in a smooth pattern that seemed to require no thought. "Better," Vincent acknowledged, "but you're telegraphing. I can see everything you're going to do 2 seconds before you do it." Marcus's breath was already coming harder. He'd been fighting for less than a minute and hadn't landed a single clean shot. The crowd around the ring had gone quiet, watching with the focused attention of people witnessing something unexpected. "Come on, Hammer," someone shouted. "Show him what you got!" Marcus gritted his teeth and launched a furious assault, throwing everything he had, hooks, crosses, uppercuts. He was faster than Vincent, younger, with more raw power. But it didn't matter. Vincent moved like water, flowing around each punch, occasionally tapping Marcus's ribs or shoulders. Not hard enough to hurt, but enough to show he could have hit much harder if he'd wanted to. Then, in the middle of one of Marcus's wild swings, Vincent stopped moving defensively. He stepped inside Marcus's guard, his right hand suddenly a blur. The punch landed just below Marcus's sternum, a precise, controlled shot that carried decades of refined technique behind it. The air exploded from Marcus's lungs. His legs turned to rubber. The world tilted. Before he could fall, Vincent's left hand shot out, not to hit, but to steady him, gripping his shoulder. "Breathe," Vincent said, his voice close to Marcus's ear. "Slow breaths." Marcus gasped, his vision swimming. The basement spun around him. He was vaguely aware of Vincent lowering him to the canvas, of hands pulling off his gloves, of voices echoing as if from the end of a long tunnel. When his vision finally cleared, he was sitting against the ropes looking up at Vincent, who had removed his own gloves and was kneeling beside him with a bottle of water. "Drink," the old man said. Marcus took the bottle with shaking hands, his pride as bruised as his solar plexus. The fight, if it could even be called that, had lasted less than 3 minutes. He hadn't landed a single meaningful punch. Vincent settled onto the canvas beside him, close enough that the younger men around the ring couldn't hear them clearly. His voice, when he spoke, was gentle but firm. "You came here thinking strength was about how hard you can hit," Vincent said, staring out at the crowd dispersing around them, disappointed the show was over so quickly. You wanted to prove you're powerful. But let me tell you something, Marcus. Something I learned a long time ago, when I was even younger and stupider than you. He turned to look at Marcus directly, and in his eyes was something unexpected. Not anger, not mockery, but a kind of weary wisdom. Strength isn't about power, it's about control. Control of your body, your emotions, your reactions. Any fool can throw wild punches. That's not fighting. That's just violence. He paused, letting the words sink in. In this world I live in, the moment you lose control, you're dead. Not metaphorically, actually dead. Marcus sat in silence, each breath still painful, listening. You've got potential, Vincent continued. I could see it in your footwork, in the way you adapted during the fight. But potential means nothing without discipline, without control. He stood up slowly, extending a hand to help Marcus to his feet. Your father was a man of control. He worked hard, provided for his family, never caused trouble. He had strength in the ways that actually matter. Marcus took the offered hand, allowing himself to be pulled up. His legs were steadier now, but his ego was still shattered on the canvas behind him. I'm going to give you something your father would have given you if he'd lived long enough, Vincent said. A choice. You can walk out that door and go back to being the best fighter in South Philly, winning matches at McGinty's, proving nothing to nobody. Or, he paused, his eyes measuring Marcus. You can come back here, every Tuesday and Thursday, 6 a.m. I'll teach you what real fighting looks like, not the street brawl garbage you've been doing, real discipline, real control. Marcus stared at him, confused. Why would you do that? Vincent's expression softened slightly. Because I see myself in you. Same anger, same need to prove something, same stupidity. The difference is I learned from someone who took the time to teach me. Saved my life, probably. Maybe I can do the same for you. He walked toward the stairs, then stopped and looked back. But understand this, if you accept, you're accepting on my terms. You show up late, you disrespect the training, you're out. No second chances. In my world, you get one shot at respect. Don't waste it. Marcus stood alone in the ring as Vincent climbed the stairs and disappeared. Around him the basement was emptying, men filing out and discussing the brief, one-sided fight. Tommy lingered at the bottom of the stairs, watching him with an unreadable expression. You got lucky, kid, Tommy said finally. Boss doesn't offer that to just anybody. Hell, he doesn't offer it to anybody. You think about that. When Marcus finally made his way up the stairs and out into the cold Philadelphia rain, his mind was reeling. He'd come here to prove he was the best fighter in the city. Instead, he'd been dismantled in less than 3 minutes by a man old enough to be his grandfather. But as he walked through the rain-slicked streets toward his small apartment, replaying every second of the fight in his mind, Marcus realized something had shifted. The anger that usually drove him, the need to prove himself through violence, felt different now. Smaller somehow. For the first time in years, Marcus Johnson felt like he had something more important than his next fight. He had a choice to make. The digital clock on Marcus's nightstand read 5:17 a.m. when his alarm shattered the silence of his studio apartment. He slapped it off and lay there in the darkness, staring at the water-stained ceiling, his body screaming at him to go back to sleep. It had been 3 days since the fight, or rather, the humiliation at Salvatore's. His ribs still ached where Vincent's single punch had landed, a constant reminder of how completely outmatched he'd been. For 3 days, he'd wrestled with the decision, his pride battling against something deeper, something he couldn't quite name. Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. Vincent's offer hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus swung his legs out of bed and dressed quickly in the cold apartment. October in Philadelphia meant mornings that bit at your skin, frost creeping along window edges. He pulled on his running gear, grabbed his gym bag, and headed out into the pre-dawn darkness. The streets of South Philly were quiet at this hour, just a few early shift workers trudging toward the subway, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Streetlights cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalks. Marcus jogged the 12 blocks to Salvatore's, his breath coming in steady rhythms, his mind racing faster than his feet. What am I doing? He thought. Training with a mob boss. This is insane. But beneath the doubt was something else, a hunger he'd felt since his father died, a need for direction, for purpose beyond the endless cycle of street fights that led nowhere. The social club looked different in the morning light, less menacing, almost respectable. Marcus tried the front door. Locked. He was about to knock when he heard a voice from the alley beside the building. "Around back, kid." Tommy stood in the alleyway, smoking a cigarette, wearing a tracksuit instead of his usual expensive suit. He jerked his head toward the back entrance. "Boss is already downstairs. You're 2 minutes late." Marcus checked his phone. 5:59 a.m. "It's not even 6 yet. If you're not early, you're late. First lesson." Tommy stubbed out his cigarette and opened the heavy metal door. "Come on." The basement was already lit, and Marcus could hear the rhythmic sound of leather hitting leather. He descended the stairs to find Vincent working a heavy bag, his movements precise and economical. He wore simple grey sweats and a white t-shirt, his silver hair slightly disheveled from exertion. Despite his age, his punches made the heavy bag swing with impressive force. He glanced at Marcus without stopping his routine. "You came. I came. Good." Vincent delivered a final combination to the bag, then stepped back, barely winded. He grabbed a towel and wiped his face. "Before we start, I need to know something. Why are you really here? And don't give me that 'prove I'm the best' garbage. That's pride talking. I want the truth." Marcus set down his bag slowly, buying time to formulate an answer. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of the basement, there was nowhere to hide. Vincent's eyes pinned him in place, demanding honesty. "My dad died 8 months ago," Marcus said finally. "Heart attack at the docks. He was 52, worked his whole life, never complained, did everything right. And what did he get? A cheap funeral and a lifetime of aching joints." The words came faster now, pouring out. "I watched him come home every night, exhausted, beaten down. I swore I'd never be like that. I'd make my own way, be somebody people respected, feared even. Fighting was the one thing I was good at." He paused, swallowing hard. "But after he died, the fight started feeling empty, like I was just punching air, proving nothing to nobody. When I heard about you, I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe if I could beat someone like you, it would mean something." Vincent listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When Marcus finished, the old man nodded slowly. "Your father was a good man, Marcus. Better than me, certainly. He built things, a life, a family, a reputation for honesty in a neighborhood where that's rare. He walked to a corner of the basement and returned with 2 pairs of boxing gloves. But he also left you with a hole you're trying to fill with violence. That doesn't honor his memory, it wastes it." The words hit harder than any punch. Marcus felt his throat tighten. "We're going to fill that hole with something better," Vincent continued. "Discipline, control, purpose. But it won't be easy and it won't be quick. You ready for that?" Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "Words, Marcus. I need to hear you say it." "I'm ready." "Good. Put these on." The next 2 hours were the hardest of Marcus's life. Vincent didn't teach him how to fight. He taught him how to unlearn everything he thought he knew about fighting. "Stance," Vincent barked, circling Marcus like a drill sergeant. "You're standing like you're about to brawl in an alley. This isn't street fighting. Your feet are too wide. Narrow them. Good. Now your hands. Protect your face. You drop that left hand one more time and we start over." They worked on footwork for 45 minutes. Just footwork. Moving forward, backward, side to side, maintaining balance. Every time Marcus got sloppy, Vincent made him start again. "You think this is boring?" Vincent asked, watching Marcus shuffle in a circle for the 100th time. "This is the foundation. You can't build a house without a foundation. Same with fighting. Every great boxer in history spent years on basics before they ever stepped in a real ring." Then came the jab. For another hour, they worked on nothing but the jab. How to throw it, how to retract it, how to use footwork to add power, how to keep your guard up while extending. "Your street fighting taught you to load up on every punch," Vincent explained, demonstrating. "You wind up like you're throwing a baseball. That might work in a bar fight where your opponent is drunk and slow. But against someone who knows what they're doing, you're announcing every punch 3 seconds before it lands." He showed Marcus the correct form, a quick, snapping motion that generated power from the legs and hips, not from telegraphing with the shoulders. Speed comes from efficiency. Power comes from technique. You put those together with control, and you become dangerous. By 8 a.m., Marcus was drenched in sweat, his arms feeling like lead weights. He hadn't thrown a single combination, hadn't practiced any of the flashy moves he was known for at McGinty's, just footwork and jabs. "That's enough for today," Vincent said, tossing Marcus a towel. "Thursday, same time. We'll work on the cross." Marcus caught the towel, his hands shaking from exertion. "Just the cross for 2 hours? You got somewhere better to be?" No, I thought we'd be actually fighting. Vincent's expression hardened slightly. You want to actually fight? Go back to McGinty's. Plenty of people there will swing at you. But if you want to learn what I'm teaching, you'll do it my way. Slow, methodical, building one piece at a time. He paused. Rome wasn't built in a day, Marcus. Neither are real fighters. As Marcus gathered his things to leave, Tommy appeared at the bottom of the stairs with a paper bag. Boss says you need to eat better, Tommy said, handing it over. Can't train on the garbage you probably eat. Marcus opened the bag to find a sandwich wrapped in deli paper, an apple, and a protein bar. The gesture surprised him. Thanks, he muttered. Don't thank me. Thank the boss. And don't be late Thursday. Walking home through the now busy morning streets, Marcus felt different. Exhausted, humbled, but also purposeful. For the first time since his father's death, he'd spent 2 hours doing something that felt like it mattered. The weeks that followed established a rhythm. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, 5:45 a.m., Marcus arrived at the back entrance of Salvatore's. Vincent was always there first, already warmed up, ready to drill the fundamentals with relentless patience. They worked on the basic punches, jab, cross, hook, uppercut, spending entire sessions on single techniques. Vincent broke down every movement into components: weight transfer, hip rotation, shoulder positioning, hand placement. He was exacting and demanding, making Marcus repeat movements hundreds of times until they became muscle memory. Your body needs to know these movements without thinking, Vincent explained during their 3rd week. In a real fight, you don't have time to think. Your training takes over. That's why we drill, over and over and over. But it wasn't just physical training. Between drills, while Marcus caught his breath, Vincent would talk about his own past, about the principles that had kept him alive in a dangerous world. I grew up in this neighborhood, Vincent said one morning, sitting on the edge of the ring while Marcus worked the speed bag. 1960s, early 70s. Different world then. My father worked construction, died when I was 16, fell off a scaffold. No safety equipment, no insurance, nothing. Left my mother with 4 kids and no money. Marcus slowed his rhythm on the speed bag, listening. I was angry like you, wanted to hurt the world because it had hurt me. Started getting into trouble running with the wrong crews. Then I met Angelo Benedetti, the man who ran the family before me. He saw something in me, same as I see something in you. Took me under his wing. He taught you to fight? Marcus asked. He taught me to think. Fighting was just one part of it. Angelo used to say, Vincent, any animal can be violent, but only humans can choose when to be violent and when to be patient. That's control. That's what separates us from savages. Vincent stood up and walked to where Marcus stood by the speed bag. You know what happened to all my friends from those early days? The ones who couldn't learn control. They're dead or in prison, every single one. The ones who survived in this life, in any life, were the ones who learned discipline. These conversations became as important as the physical training. Marcus began to see Vincent not just as a fighter, but as someone who'd navigated impossible choices and somehow maintained his own code. One Thursday in late November, Marcus arrived to find Vincent wasn't alone. A young woman sat in one of the folding chairs near the ring, watching Vincent wrap his hands. She was in her mid-20s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing business casual attire that seemed out of place in the gritty basement. Marcus, this is my daughter Sophia, Vincent said without looking up from his hand wraps. Sophia, this is the young man I've been telling you about. Sophia stood and extended her hand. Her grip was firm, her gaze appraising. Dad says you're making progress. Trying to, Marcus said, acutely aware of how much he was sweating already from his warm-up run. Sophia's a lawyer, Vincent said. Works at one of the big firms downtown. Makes an honest living, unlike her old man. There was pride in his voice, unmistakable. Corporate law, Sophia clarified. Mergers and acquisitions. Very boring compared to whatever stories Dad's been filling your head with. She smiled, but there was something assessing in her eyes. I wanted to meet the person my father's been waking up early for. Your father's been generous with his time, Marcus said carefully. He doesn't do anything without a reason, Sophia replied. So either he sees something in you, or he's finally going senile. I'm hoping it's the former. Vincent chuckled. Get in the ring, Marcus. Sophia can watch why I'm not senile yet. That morning's session was different. Vincent actually sparred with Marcus, light contact, controlled, but real sparring nonetheless. After 8 weeks of drilling basics, Marcus finally got to apply what he'd learned. He was shocked by how much had changed. His footwork was cleaner, his punches more precise. He still couldn't land anything meaningful on Vincent, but now he understood why. He could see the subtle shifts in Vincent's weight that telegraphed his movements, the way he used angles and positioning to control the ring. "Better," Vincent said after their 3rd round. "You're starting to think like a boxer instead of a brawler." Sophia watched the entire session without speaking, but Marcus could feel her presence, her evaluation. After they finished, she approached as he was removing his gloves. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure. What do you want from this, from training with my father?" Marcus considered the question carefully. 8 weeks ago, he would have said something about proving himself, about being the best. Now, the answer felt more complicated. "I want to be someone my father would have been proud of," he said finally. "I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but your father's helping me figure it out." Sophia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good answer." She turned to Vincent. "I like him. Don't get him killed." After she left, Vincent explained, "Sophia worries. She chose a different path, wanted nothing to do with my world. Can't blame her, but she's still my daughter, still protective." "She seems smart," Marcus said. "Smarter than me by a mile. Got a full scholarship to Penn, graduated top of her class at law school. Everything I couldn't be." Vincent's expression softened. "That's what real strength looks like, Marcus. Not fighting, not proving yourself with violence. Building something legitimate, something that lasts, something you can be proud of without looking over your shoulder." The conversation stayed with Marcus as he walked home that morning. He thought about his father, about the legitimate life he'd built through honest work, about Sophia, who'd taken her father's lessons and applied them to a different world. And he thought about himself, about what he was building here in this basement gym with a man who'd walked a very different path. December brought the first real snow to Philadelphia. Marcus continued his training, showing up early every Tuesday and Thursday, his technique improving steadily. Vincent introduced defensive movements, slips, rolls, blocks. They worked on combinations, on reading opponents, on conserving energy. But on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas, Marcus arrived to find the basement dark and empty. He checked his phone, 5:47 a.m., right on time. He waited 20 minutes, increasingly worried. Vincent had never missed a session. Finally, Tommy appeared at the top of the stairs. "Training's off today, kid. Boss had to handle some business. Is everything okay?" Tommy's expression was carefully neutral. "Business. That's all you need to know. Go home." Marcus left, but the worry gnawed at him. That night he saw the news report, a federal raid on several businesses in South Philadelphia, including a restaurant and 2 social clubs. The report mentioned Vincent Castellano by name, showed footage of FBI agents carrying boxes out of buildings. For 2 weeks, the Tuesday and Thursday sessions didn't happen. Marcus tried to continue training on his own at McGinty's, but it felt hollow. He'd text Tommy every few days, getting only brief responses. "Boss is busy" or "lay low." Then, on a Thursday morning in early January, his phone buzzed at 5:30 a.m. "Tommy, training's back on. Be there at 6, don't be late." Marcus practically ran through the frozen streets. He arrived at 5:52 to find Vincent in the basement, looking older somehow, more tired. There were new lines around his eyes, a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. "Sorry for the absence," Vincent said without preamble. "Had some complications to deal with. The news said—" "I know what the news said. We're not talking about that. We're here to train." Vincent's tone left no room for argument. "Get your gloves on." They trained in near silence that morning, Vincent pushing Marcus harder than ever before. It felt less like teaching and more like Vincent was working something out through the physical exertion. Finally, during their water break, Vincent spoke. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully." He sat on the edge of the ring, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. "What I do, my business, it's not sustainable anymore. The feds are circling, the old codes don't apply like they used to, and frankly, I'm tired." Marcus listened, not sure where this was going. "I've been in this life for 40 years. Made a lot of money, earned a lot of respect, and made a lot of enemies. But you know what I don't have? Peace. I don't sleep well. I can't go anywhere without looking over my shoulder. Every phone call might be the one telling me someone I care about got hurt because of my choices." He looked directly at Marcus. I'm telling you this because I see you standing at a crossroads. You're young, talented, smart. You could do something with your life, something real, something legitimate. Or you could follow the path I took, thinking the money and respect are worth the cost. They're not. I never asked to get involved in your business, Marcus said quietly. I know, and I'm not offering. I'm warning you. You're from this neighborhood. You know people who'd love to recruit someone like you. Strong, fearless, hungry, don't do it. The life I'm living, it's not freedom. It's a cage made of money and violence. Vincent stood up, rolling his shoulders. We're going to keep training. I'm going to teach you everything I know about fighting, about discipline, about control. But when we're done, when you're ready, I want you to walk away from all of this. Find something legitimate. Build something that would make your father proud. What about you? Marcus asked. A sad smile crossed Vincent's face. I made my choices a long time ago. I'll live with them. But you still have a chance to choose differently. They trained for another hour, but something had shifted between them. It was no longer just about fighting techniques. It was about legacy, about the choices that define a life. As Marcus left that morning, walking through the grey January dawn, he carried Vincent's words with him. The man who'd seemed invincible just months ago had revealed himself to be trapped, powerful but not free, respected but not at peace. For the first time, Marcus understood what his father had really given him. Not wealth or status, but the freedom to choose his own path. And he understood what Vincent was trying to give him too. Not just fighting skills, but the wisdom to know when fighting wasn't the answer. The real question was whether Marcus was strong enough to accept it. February in Philadelphia was brutal, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones and made the entire city feel like it was hibernating. Marcus had been training with Vincent for 4 months now, and the transformation was undeniable. His body had changed, leaner and more defined, his movements economical and precise. But more than that, his mind had changed. He still went to McGinty's gym occasionally, but the street fighters he used to spar with felt different now. Their wild swings and aggressive posturing seemed almost childish compared to the disciplined approach Vincent had instilled in him. Marcus found himself holding back, controlling his power, ending matches quickly and without unnecessary damage. "You've gone soft, Hammer," one of his old sparring partners said after a particularly quick match. "Where's that killer instinct?" Marcus just smiled and walked away. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. But that Tuesday morning, everything changed. Marcus arrived at 5:45 a.m. to find Tommy pacing in the alley, his usual calm demeanor replaced by visible agitation. He was on his phone, speaking in rapid, tense Italian. When he saw Marcus, he ended the call abruptly. "We got a problem," Tommy said without preamble. "What kind of problem?" "The kind you need to stay out of. Go home, Marcus." "Where's Vincent?" "That's not your concern. Go home." But Marcus heard the sound of raised voices from inside the building. Angry voices, including one he recognized as Vincent's. Before Tommy could stop him, Marcus pushed past him and through the back door. The basement was crowded with men Marcus had never seen before. They wore expensive suits and hard expressions, standing in a semicircle around Vincent, who stood in the center of the ring. His face was calm, but his stance was tense, ready. A younger man, maybe 35, with slicked-back dark hair and a scar running down his left cheek, was doing the talking, his voice echoing through the basement. "Disrespect, Vincent. That's what this is. You think you can just shut down operations without consulting the commission? You think you're above the structure?" "I'm not shutting anything down, Salvatore," Vincent replied, his voice measured. "I'm transitioning. There's a difference." "Transitioning to what? Retirement? You don't retire from this life, old man. You know that." Marcus started to descend the stairs, but a hand gripped his shoulder. Tommy, pulling him back. "Don't," Tommy whispered urgently. "This is family business. You don't want any part of this." But Marcus couldn't look away. He'd never seen Vincent look vulnerable before, outnumbered by men who clearly didn't respect him the way they should. The man called Salvatore Russo, Marcus would later learn, Vincent's nephew and an ambitious capo in the organization, circled the ring like a predator. "You're getting weak, uncle, soft, training street kids instead of handling business. The family needs strong leadership, and frankly, you're not it anymore." Vincent's jaw tightened. "Careful, Sal. You're talking to the man who put you where you are. And I'm grateful, but gratitude doesn't change reality. You're a liability now. The feds are watching you, which means they're watching all of us. Maybe it's time for new leadership." The tension in the room was suffocating. Several of the men Salvatore had brought shifted uncomfortably, hands moving toward waistbands. Tommy's grip on Marcus's shoulder tightened. "If you want my position, Salvatore, there are proper channels," Vincent said quietly. "We don't do this with threats and posturing. We do it through the commission, through process." Salvatore laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. "Process? The old rules are dead, Uncle. You just haven't realized it yet." He stepped closer to the ring. "But I'll tell you what, I'm a fair man. You want to prove you're still capable of leading. Prove you're still strong. Let's settle this the old way." Vincent's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting? You used to settle disputes in this ring, didn't you? Before you became so civilized. So let's do it like the old days. You and me. If you win, I back off. Give you the respect you think you deserve. If I win," he smiled coldly, "you step aside voluntarily. Announce your retirement. Clean and simple." The basement went completely silent. Tommy's grip on Marcus had gone slack as he stared in disbelief. "You want to fight me?" Vincent asked slowly. "Unless you're too old and scared." It was a trap, Marcus realized. Salvatore was younger, bigger, and if Vincent refused, he'd look weak. But if he accepted and lost, he'd have to step down. Either way, Salvatore won. Vincent stood motionless for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he smiled. "All right, nephew. Let's do this the old way." He looked at his watch. "But not now. Saturday night, 8 p.m. Give me a few days to prepare, unless you're too impatient." Salvatore's eyes gleamed with triumph. "Saturday works, but no backing out, Uncle. You don't show, I take that as a forfeit. I'll be here." Salvatore and his men filed out, their laughter echoing up the stairs. When they were gone, the basement felt cavernous and empty. Vincent stood alone in the ring, his shoulders sagging slightly. Tommy rushed down the stairs. "Boss, you can't be serious. Sal's been training MMA for years. He's half your age." "I know exactly what he is," Vincent interrupted quietly. "Get everyone out. I need to think." "But—" "Out, Tommy." Tommy looked at Marcus, who'd finally descended the stairs. "You too, kid." "No," Vincent said. "Marcus stays." Tommy hesitated, then nodded and headed up the stairs, leaving them alone. Vincent climbed out of the ring slowly, moving like every year of his age had suddenly caught up with him. He sat heavily on one of the folding chairs and put his face in his hands. Marcus had never seen him like this, vulnerable, uncertain. "You can't fight him," Marcus said quietly. "He's setting you up." "Of course he is." Vincent looked up, his face drawn. "Salvatore's been waiting for this opportunity for years. He thinks I've gone soft, thinks the family needs younger, more ruthless leadership. And you know what? Maybe he's right." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's the truth. I am getting old. I am tired, and maybe it is time to step aside." He stood and walked to the heavy bag, resting his hand against it. "But not like this. Not because my own nephew backed me into a corner. That's not how I end this." Marcus walked over to stand beside him. "Then what are you going to do?" Vincent turned to look at him, and in his eyes was something Marcus had never seen before. Not fear exactly, but a kind of resigned awareness. "I'm going to fight him, and I'm going to need your help to prepare." "My help?" "Vincent, I've only been training for 4 months. "Exactly. You know Sal's style. You grew up watching MMA, following the modern fighters. I've been doing the same boxing combinations for 40 years. I need you to help me adapt, to understand how someone like Salvatore fights. In 3 days? I know it's not much time, but you're the only person I trust to be honest with me, to push me without holding back." He gripped Marcus's shoulder. "I taught you discipline and control. Now I need you to teach me evolution." Marcus felt the weight of the request settle on him. Everything he'd learned, everything Vincent had given him, came down to this moment. "Okay," he said finally. "But we do this my way. No holding back, no excuses. If I see something you need to fix, I'm going to call it out." Vincent smiled, a real smile this time. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The next 3 days were a blur of intensive training. Marcus arrived at 5 a.m. each morning, and they worked until noon, breaking only for water and brief rest periods. Vincent had Tommy bring in videos of Salvatore's training sessions, footage from an underground fight club where Sal fought regularly. Marcus watched the videos carefully, analyzing Salvatore's style. He was aggressive, mixing boxing with kicks, takedowns, and groundwork. Modern, brutal, effective. He's going to try to take you down, Marcus explained, rewatching a clip of Salvatore executing a double-leg takedown. That's where he's most dangerous. On the ground with his weight and youth advantage, he'll destroy you. So I keep it standing. Easier said than done. He's fast and he's willing to take a punch to get inside your guard. We need to work on your sprawl, your takedown defense. They drilled relentlessly. Marcus, drawing on his street-fighting background and the MMA videos he'd watched for years, taught Vincent how to defend against takedowns, how to control distance against an aggressive opponent, how to use angles to avoid being cornered. Your traditional boxing stance is too square, Marcus said on the second day. You need to be more bladed. Make it harder for him to shoot in on your legs. Vincent adjusted, frustration evident on his face. This feels unnatural, because you've been standing the same way for 40 years. But Sal's not going to fight like the guys you fought back in the day. You need to adapt or you'll lose. The words were harsh, but Vincent had asked for honesty. He nodded and kept working. They brought in Tommy to simulate Salvatore's aggressive, rushing style. Vincent worked on his footwork, circling away from attacks, using his jab to keep distance. Marcus drilled him on what to do if the fight went to the ground, basic defensive positions, how to create space, how to get back to his feet. You're not going to win a grappling match, Marcus said bluntly, but you can survive one long enough to get back up. That's the goal. On the third day, Sophia showed up unexpectedly during their afternoon session. She watched for a few minutes, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "Dad, can we talk?" she asked. Vincent nodded, and they stepped away to the corner of the basement. Marcus tried not to listen, but their voices carried. "This is insane," Sophia said, her voice tight with emotion. "You're 62 years old. Salvatore is trying to bait you into something that could get you seriously hurt. I know what he's doing, sweetheart. Then why are you playing along? Just retire, walk away. We have enough money. You don't need this anymore." "It's not about need. It's about how I leave. I've spent 40 years building something in this organization. I'm not going to let some ambitious punk take it from me through intimidation." "Your pride is going to get you killed," Vincent's voice softened. "Maybe, but I've lived my whole life by a code. That code says you don't back down, you don't show weakness, and you face your challenges head-on. If I break that code now, at the end, what was it all for?" Sophia wiped at her eyes angrily. "It was for surviving. For being here alive, able to maybe have a few good years without looking over your shoulder constantly. That's what it was for." She turned to Marcus. "And you're helping him with this." Marcus met her gaze steadily. "I'm helping him prepare. That's different." "Is it?" "Because from where I'm standing, you're enabling him to do something incredibly dangerous. Your father taught me that you face your problems with discipline and control," Marcus said. "That's what he's doing. No, what he's doing is letting his ego write checks his body can't cash." She looked back at Vincent. "I can't watch this. Call me when it's over." She left, and the basement felt colder in her absence. Vincent stood still for a moment, then walked back to where Marcus waited. "Let's keep going." "Vincent, maybe she's—" "I know what she is. She's right, probably. But this is my choice to make." His eyes met Marcus's. "You understand that, don't you? Sometimes you have to do things that don't make sense to anyone else, because they're necessary for who you are." Marcus did understand. It was the same feeling that had driven him to McGinty's all those nights, looking for validation through violence. The same need to prove something that couldn't be quantified or explained. "Yeah," Marcus said quietly, "I understand." They trained until dark, and when Marcus finally left that evening, his hands were shaking from exhaustion and worry. He'd done everything he could to prepare Vincent, but they both knew it might not be enough. Saturday arrived with cruel inevitability. Marcus spent the day pacing his apartment, unable to focus on anything. At 7 p.m. he headed to Salvatore's social club. The basement was packed. Word had spread through the organization, and it seemed like every made man and associate in Philadelphia had shown up to witness the spectacle. The air was thick with cigar smoke and anticipation, money changing hands as bets were placed. Marcus pushed through the crowd to find Tommy near the ring. The older man looked sick with worry. "This is a mistake," Tommy muttered. "Boss is too old for this. He knows what he's doing." "Does he? Or is he just too stubborn to admit he should walk away?" Marcus didn't have an answer for that. At 8 p.m. exactly, Salvatore arrived with his entourage. He wore MMA shorts and a tight-fitting compression shirt that showed off his muscular build. He looked confident, predatory, like a younger lion ready to take down the pride leader. Then Vincent appeared from the back room, and a hush fell over the crowd. He wore simple boxing shorts and a white tank top, his silver hair combed back, his expression serene. At 62, he looked smaller than Salvatore, older, more vulnerable. But he moved with quiet dignity as he climbed into the ring. The rules were simple. No rounds, no time limit. The fight ended when someone couldn't continue or submitted. Bare knuckles, anything goes. Marcus's stomach churned. This wasn't boxing. This was a street fight disguised as a match. An old-timer Marcus didn't recognize served as referee. He called both fighters to the center of the ring. "This is family business," he said gravely. "When this is done, it's settled. No revenge, no grudges. Everyone understands." Both men nodded. "Then fight with honor. Protect yourselves at all times." He stepped back, and the basement erupted with shouts as the fight began. Salvatore came out aggressive, exactly as Marcus had predicted. He threw a combination, jab, cross, low kick, testing Vincent's defense. Vincent circled away, using his footwork to maintain distance, his hands high in a modified stance that protected both his head and defended against takedowns. Salvatore pressed forward, throwing heavy punches. Vincent slipped and blocked, countering with quick jabs that snapped Salvatore's head back, but didn't seem to hurt him. The younger man smiled, tasting blood from a split lip. "That all you got, old man?" He shot in for a takedown. Vincent sprawled, the movement Marcus had drilled him on for 3 days, spreading his legs and dropping his weight. For a moment, the takedown was defended, but Salvatore adjusted, switching to a single leg grab. He was stronger, his grip like iron around Vincent's calf. Vincent hopped backward, trying to maintain balance, throwing short punches at Salvatore's head. Then Salvatore yanked hard, and Vincent went down. The crowd roared. Marcus's heart sank. On the ground, Salvatore immediately moved to establish dominance, trying to secure a top position. But Vincent, remembering Marcus's instructions, created space with his legs, preventing Salvatore from settling into a controlling position. They scrambled, Salvatore trying to pass Vincent's guard, Vincent using every ounce of his experience and strength to keep the younger man from establishing a dominant position. It was ugly, desperate, exhausting. Finally, Vincent managed to create enough space to get back to his feet. Both men stood, breathing hard. Salvatore had a cut above his eye from Vincent's punches during the ground scramble. Vincent was holding his ribs, where Salvatore had landed several hard knees. They circled each other. The crowd was silent now, absorbed in the brutal reality of what they were witnessing. Salvatore attacked again, throwing a wild overhand right. Vincent slipped it, barely, and countered with a short hook that caught Salvatore on the temple. The younger man staggered. For a moment, Marcus saw a flash of the old Vincent, the fighter who'd built his reputation on precision and power. He pressed forward, throwing a combination that backed Salvatore against the ropes. But youth and conditioning won out. Salvatore weathered the storm, clinched up and threw vicious knees to Vincent's body. Marcus heard the air explode from Vincent's lungs. They broke apart. Vincent was slowing down, his movements less sharp, his breathing labored. Salvatore sensed it, smiling through his own exhaustion and blood. "You're done, old man, just quit." But Vincent didn't quit. He kept fighting, using everything he had, his technique, his ringcraft, his sheer stubborn will. For 10 minutes that felt like hours they battled. Vincent landed the cleaner shots, but Salvatore absorbed them and kept coming, wearing the older man down with youth and relentless aggression. Then, during another scramble, Salvatore finally secured what he'd been hunting for, a rear-naked choke. His arm snaked around Vincent's neck, locking in the submission. Vincent's face turned red as he fought the choke, his hands trying to pry Salvatore's arm away. The crowd was on their feet, shouting. Marcus pushed to the edge of the ring, his hands gripping the ropes. "Don't quit!" he shouted. "Don't you dare quit!" But he could see Vincent's strength fading, his movements becoming weaker. In seconds, he would pass out. And then Vincent did something unexpected. Instead of fighting the choke, he relaxed. His hands dropped from Salvatore's arm and tapped twice on the younger man's shoulder. Submission. Salvatore released the choke immediately, standing and raising his arms in victory. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and disappointed groans as money changed hands. Vincent lay on the canvas, gasping for air, Tommy and Marcus rushing to his side. "Get him up," Tommy said urgently. "Get him out of here." They helped Vincent to his feet. He was unsteady, his face bruised and swelling, blood from a cut on his cheek staining his tank top, but he shook off their help and stood on his own. Salvatore approached, extending his hand. "It was a good fight, Uncle. You've still got heart." Vincent looked at the offered hand for a long moment, then shook it. "To take care of the family, Salvatore, lead them better than I did." Then he walked out of the ring under his own power, his back straight despite the pain, refusing to show weakness even in defeat. Marcus followed him to the back room, where Tommy was already preparing ice packs and first aid supplies. "Let me see those ribs," Tommy said, but Vincent waved him off. "I'm fine, just give me a minute." He sat heavily on a folding chair, and for the first time, he looked truly old. The fight had taken everything out of him, left him hollow. Sophia burst into the room, her eyes red from crying. "Dad, I'm okay, sweetheart." "No, you're not. Look at you." She knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she touched the bruises forming on his face. Why did you do this?" Vincent looked at her with tired eyes. "Because some battles you have to fight, even when you know you might lose. That's what having principles means. Principles aren't worth dying for. Sometimes they're the only things worth dying for." He smiled gently and touched her face. "But I'm not dying. I'm just retiring. For real this time." Marcus stood back, watching the scene unfold, feeling like an intruder on an intimate family moment, but Vincent looked up at him. "Marcus, come here." He approached, and Vincent stood with effort, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I need you to understand something. I didn't lose tonight because I wasn't strong enough or skilled enough. I lost because Salvatore wanted it more. He was willing to do whatever it took to win. Me? I realized halfway through that fight that I didn't want it anymore. The position, the power, the respect. I'd been holding onto it out of habit, out of fear of being irrelevant." He paused, breathing carefully through his bruised ribs. "That choke, I could have fought it longer. Might have even broken free, but I realized I didn't want to. This was my way out, the excuse I needed to finally walk away. So I took it." "You threw the fight?" Marcus asked, shocked. "I fought as hard as I could, but when the moment came to make a choice, hold on or let go, I chose to let go." Vincent smiled despite the split lip. "That's control, Marcus. The ultimate control. Knowing when to stop fighting." He looked at Sophia. "Take me home, sweetheart. I'm tired." As they prepared to leave, Vincent turned back to Marcus one last time. "Keep training. Find something worth fighting for, something real. And when you find it, fight for it with everything you've got, but also know when the fight is over. Promise me." Marcus nodded, his throat too tight for words. "Good. Tommy will give you a key to the basement. It's yours now. Train whoever needs it. Pass on what I taught you." Then Vincent Castellano walked out of the social club for the last time, leaning on his daughter's arm, leaving behind the only life he'd ever known. Marcus stood in the empty back room, the sounds of the celebrating crowd filtering through the walls, and felt the weight of everything that had just changed. The teacher had given his final lesson. True strength wasn't about winning every fight. It was about knowing which fights mattered, fighting them with honor, and having the wisdom to walk away when the cost became too high. Spring came to Philadelphia like a promise. Cherry blossoms blooming along the Schuylkill River, the harsh winter finally releasing its grip on the city. Marcus stood outside the newly painted storefront on East Passyunk Avenue, looking up at the sign he'd spent the last 3 months planning. Castellano Boxing Academy. It read in bold letters with smaller text underneath. Discipline, control, purpose. Tommy walked up beside him, carrying the last box of equipment from the truck. At 63, he'd retired from Vincent's organization the same day Vincent had, choosing a different path after 40 years of service. "Boss would have liked this," Tommy said, nodding at the sign. "You think so?" "No, so. He always said the gym was the best part of his day, the only place where things made sense." Tommy hefted the box. "Where you want this?" with the other gloves in the equipment room. The space had once been a hardware store that had gone out of business. Marcus had used every dollar he'd saved, plus a loan co-signed by Sophia, who'd become surprisingly supportive of the project, to transform it into a proper boxing gym. Regulation ring in the center, heavy bags along the walls, speed bags, jump ropes, weights. Everything needed to train fighters the right way. But more than that, it was a place for kids from the neighborhood, kids like Marcus had been, to learn discipline before they learned the wrong lessons from the streets. The door opened, and Sophia entered, carrying a tray of coffee and a folder of paperwork. "Health inspection is all cleared," she said, handing Marcus his coffee. "And I filed the non-profit paperwork. You should have tax-exempt status within 6 weeks." "Thank you." Again. "I don't know what I'd do without your help." Sophia smiled. She looked different than she had 6 months ago. Less tense, more at peace. "My father spent 40 years in a world that took everything from him. The least I can do is help build something that gives back." She looked around the gym. "This is what he wanted, you know, not for himself, for you, for the neighborhood." Marcus had visited Vincent several times since that night in February. The older man was living quietly in a modest house in the suburbs, spending his days reading, gardening, and having dinner with Sophia every Sunday. The bruises had faded, but something in him had fundamentally changed. He seemed lighter somehow, unburdened. "He's coming to the opening, right?" Marcus asked. "He promised he'd be here. Wouldn't miss it." The opening was scheduled for Saturday afternoon, a free community event, demonstrations, sign-ups for classes. Marcus had already lined up several instructors, former boxers from the area who believed in the mission. The plan was to offer free training for kids who couldn't afford it, funded by adult classes and Sophia's fundraising through her corporate connections. Saturday arrived with perfect spring weather, sunny and warm, the kind of day that brought people out onto the streets. Marcus had posted flyers all over South Philly, and by noon, a crowd had gathered outside the gym. He stood inside, nervously adjusting the gloves on the display table, when he heard a familiar voice. "Looking good, Hammer." Carlos Martinez stood in the doorway, grinning. He'd been one of Marcus's main rivals at McGinty's gym, a talented fighter who'd made a reputation on the amateur circuit. "Carlos, didn't expect to see you here." "Are you kidding? I heard you were opening a legit gym with actual coaching instead of that meat market at McGinty's. I'm here to sign up." He looked around appreciatively. "This place is serious. You taking on fighters for competition?" "That's the plan. Want to help coach?" Carlos's eyes lit up. "For real? If you're interested, I need people who know the game but also understand what we're trying to do here. Build fighters from the ground up the right way. Count me in." Over the next hour, more people arrived. Old neighbors who remembered Marcus and his father. Parents with kids looking for after-school activities. Even a few reporters from local papers, interested in the story of a former street fighter opening a community gym. And then Vincent arrived. He came quietly, without fanfare, wearing a simple polo shirt and slacks. Sophia was with him, as was Tommy. Marcus felt his chest tighten seeing his mentor walk through the door. Vincent looked around the gym slowly, taking in every detail. The ring, the equipment, the framed photos Marcus had hung, showing legendary boxers through history. When his eyes found the small dedication plaque on the wall near the entrance, he stopped. The plaque read, "In honor of Vincent Castellano and Johnny Johnson, men who understood that true strength comes from discipline, control, and the courage to choose the right path." Vincent's eyes glistened. He turned to Marcus, unable to speak for a moment. "You didn't have to—" "Yes, I did. You changed my life. Both of you did in different ways. This place exists because of what you taught me." Vincent pulled him into a tight embrace. "Your father would be so proud of you, Marcus. I know I am." The opening event was a success. Marcus gave demonstrations in the ring, showing proper technique to an audience that included dozens of kids whose eyes lit up with excitement. Carlos helped run drills with volunteers. Tommy manned the sign-up table, processing membership applications with surprising efficiency. But the moment that mattered most came near the end of the day. A young teenager, maybe 14, with the same angry, lost look Marcus remembered from his own mirrors, approached hesitantly. "Is it true you used to fight at McGinty's?" the kid asked. "Yeah, I did." "And you won a lot?" "Most of them." The kid shifted uncomfortably. "I've been getting into fights at school. My mom says I got anger problems. She saw the flyer and made me come." He looked at the floor. "I don't want to be here." Marcus knelt down to the kid's eye level. "What's your name?" "Deshaun." "Deshaun, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. Fighting doesn't fix anger. It just gives you an outlet. But you know what does fix anger? Control. Learning that you're stronger than your emotions, that you can choose how to respond instead of just reacting. That's what my mom says. Your mom's smart. Listen to her." Marcus stood up. "But I'll make you a deal. You come here 3 times a week for 1 month. Just 1 month. Show up on time, follow instructions, give it a real try. If after a month you still don't want to be here, you can walk away. No judgment. Deshawn considered this. What if I'm not good at it? Doesn't matter if you're good at it. What matters is that you try, that you show up, that you learn something about yourself. Marcus extended his hand. Deal. Deshawn shook it. Deal. Watching the kid walk away to where his mother waited, Marcus felt something shift inside him, a sense of purpose he'd never experienced before. This was what he was meant to do. Not prove himself through violence, but help others find the control and discipline he'd discovered. As the sun set and the crowd dispersed, Marcus found himself sitting on the edge of the ring with Vincent, just the two of them, in the quiet gym. "You know what's interesting?" Vincent said. "I spent 40 years trying to build an empire, trying to be respected and feared. And in the end, the thing I'm most proud of is this, helping you find your way. I couldn't have done it without you. Maybe, but I couldn't have done this without you either. You gave me a reason to remember who I was before everything got complicated, before the money and power made me forget what actually matters." He looked around the gym. "This place, it's what I should have built 30 years ago, instead of the empire I did build." "It's not too late," Marcus said. "You could still be involved, help coach. Pass on what you know." Vincent smiled. "Maybe I will. Sophia's been on me about finding a hobby. Says I'm driving her crazy being retired and underfoot all the time." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the evening light filter through the windows. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said finally. "That night with Salvatore, did you really choose to lose? Or is that just what you told yourself after?" Vincent considered the question carefully. "Honestly, I'm not sure. In the moment, when I had the choice to keep fighting or tap out, 100 thoughts went through my mind. I could feel my body giving out, knew I didn't have much left. But I also felt relief, like I'd been given permission to stop carrying a weight I'd been holding for decades." He turned to look at Marcus. "Maybe I lost because he was better. Maybe I lost because I wanted to. Maybe it was both. The truth is complicated, and that's okay. What matters is that I made a choice, and I'm at peace with it. No regrets? Plenty of regrets. But not about that night. Not about walking away." Vincent stood up, stretching his back. "The real courage isn't in fighting every battle that comes your way. It's in knowing which battles are worth fighting and which ones you need to walk away from. That's the lesson I hope you carry forward." 3 months later, the Castellano Boxing Academy had become a fixture in the South Philly community. Morning classes for adults looking to get in shape, afternoon programs for kids, evening sessions for serious competitive fighters. Marcus had assembled a solid team of coaches, with Vincent coming by twice a week to work with advanced students, teaching the refined technique that only decades of experience could provide. Deshawn, the angry 14-year-old from opening day, had kept his promise. He'd shown up 3 times a week and something had shifted. His mother reported that the fights at school had stopped, his grades were improving, and in the ring he was developing into a disciplined, thoughtful fighter. "He reminds me of someone," Vincent said one afternoon, watching Deshawn work the heavy bag with controlled precision. "Yeah? A stupid kid who walked into my social club thinking he could prove something with his fists. Look how that turned out." Marcus laughed. "That kid was an idiot. That kid was searching for something. He just didn't know what it was yet." Vincent clapped him on the shoulder. "Good thing he found a crazy old man willing to teach him." The door to the gym opened, and Sophia entered with an older man Marcus didn't recognize, distinguished in his 60s, wearing an expensive suit. "Marcus, this is Richard Chen," Sophia said. "He's on the board of the Philadelphia Youth Foundation. They provide grants for community programs." Richard extended his hand. "Ms. Castellano tells me you've built something special here. I wanted to see it for myself." They gave him a tour of the facility, introduced him to the coaches and some of the kids. Marcus explained the vision. Not just teaching boxing, but using the discipline of the sport to help young people build character, confidence, and control. "How many kids are you serving now?" Richard asked. 43 in the youth program, about half of them on full scholarships. "And your funding model?" "Adult memberships cover operating costs. We're applying for grants to expand the scholarship program and potentially open a second location." Richard nodded thoughtfully, watching Deshawn demonstrate proper form for a group of younger kids, patiently correcting their stance and encouraging them. "I've reviewed your application to the foundation," Richard said. "The board was impressed by your approach, using boxing not as an end in itself, but as a vehicle for teaching life skills. That's exactly the kind of innovative programming we're looking to support. He pulled an envelope from his briefcase and handed it to Marcus. "This is a preliminary offer. Pending final approval, the Foundation would like to fund a 3-year grant to support your scholarship program and help you open 2 additional locations in underserved areas of Philadelphia." Marcus opened the envelope with shaking hands. The number made his breath catch. It was enough to transform the gym from a struggling non-profit into a sustainable organization that could genuinely impact hundreds of kids. I don't know what to say. "Say you'll put it to good use," Richard smiled, "and that you'll invite me to the ribbon cutting when you open those new locations." After he left, Marcus stood in the center of the gym, still holding the envelope, trying to process what had just happened. Vincent walked over, having watched the entire exchange from the ring. "Your father would be proud," he said simply. "Hell, I'm proud. You took what I taught you about discipline and control, and you're multiplying it, creating something that will outlast both of us. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Sure you could have, maybe not exactly this, but something. You had the potential all along, Marcus. I just helped you find it." Vincent looked around the gym, at the kids training, the coaches teaching, the whole ecosystem of growth and learning. This is legacy, not money or power or respect earned through fear. This is something real. That evening, after the gym closed, Marcus sat alone in his small office, looking at the framed photograph on his desk. It showed him standing with Vincent and Tommy after a particularly grueling training session, all 3 of them exhausted and smiling. Sophia had taken it with her phone and printed it for him. His phone buzzed with a text from Deshawn's mother. "Just wanted to thank you again. Deshawn's teacher called today. He stood up for a kid being bullied, but didn't use violence. Used his words and got help. She said it was the most mature thing she's seen from him. Whatever you're teaching him, it's working. Thank you." Marcus smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest. This was what it was all about. Not the fights he'd won, not the reputation he'd built, but the impact he could have on one kid, then another, then another. He thought about his father, working the docks for 30 years, building a quiet legacy of honesty and hard work. He thought about Vincent, who'd walked away from power to find peace. He thought about his own journey, from angry street fighter to someone who could actually make a difference. The path hadn't been what he'd expected. He'd started out wanting to prove he was the strongest, the toughest, the best. Instead, he'd learned that true strength had nothing to do with how hard you could hit. It was about discipline, control, purpose, having the courage to face your demons, the wisdom to learn from those who'd walked difficult paths before you, and the strength to build something meaningful from the lessons. Marcus turned off the lights in the gym, pausing to look at the ring one last time before heading home. Tomorrow there would be more kids to teach, more lives to impact, more opportunities to pass forward what Vincent had given him. That angry, stupid kid who'd challenged a mob boss to a fight for fun was gone. In his place stood a man who understood what really mattered. And somewhere in the suburbs, Vincent Castellano was probably sitting in his garden, at peace for the first time in 40 years, knowing that his final lesson had taken root and grown into something beautiful. The fight was over. The real work had just begun. 5 years later, the Castellano Boxing Academy had expanded to 4 locations across Philadelphia, serving over 300 young people. Marcus had been featured in several national publications as an example of using sports to create positive change in urban communities. Deshawn, now 19, had earned a scholarship to Temple University and returned to work as a junior coach during summers, helping the next generation of kids find their path. Vincent passed away peacefully in his sleep at 69, surrounded by family. His funeral was attended by hundreds, former associates from his old life, yes, but also dozens of kids from the gym, parents whose children he'd mentored, and community members whose lives he'd touched through his work with Marcus. In his will, Vincent left a substantial donation to the Academy's scholarship fund, ensuring that no child would ever be turned away for lack of money. Sophia continued to serve on the gym's board, expanding her legal practice to include pro bono work for youth-focused non-profits throughout the city. And sometimes, late at night when the gym was empty, Marcus would stand in the ring and shadow box, practicing the precise, controlled movements Vincent had taught him, not to prepare for a fight, but to remember that strength wasn't about power, it was about control. And that the greatest victories weren't won in the ring, they were won in the quiet moments when you chose discipline over chaos, wisdom over pride, legacy over glory. The old man had been right about everything.